Okay, so good afternoon and welcome to our topic. I'm very excited to facilitate on behalf of the Economic Development Division of Georgia Piedmont on the topic of fostering employee engagement, communication, and continuity of operations during the coronavirus crisis. A very timely topic, so I am excited to go ahead and dive in. And I'm going to try to advance the slide here. There we go. A little bit about the flow for today, so you guys will kind of know how things are going to go. I'll turn it over in just a moment to Kelly, who will kind of give the official welcome on behalf of Georgia Piedmont Economic Division, and then we'll get into the panel introductions. And really wanted to save that just in case other people join, but hear from the panelists a little bit about themselves and their roles at the organizations that they're represented. And during the panel discussion, please do use the chat feature to put in any questions that you have, because we will have a Q&A time, but we have prepared questions that our panelists will respond to during that time. And so you can pretty much expect over the next 30 minutes, we want it to be very interactive. So don't sit on your questions, go ahead and put it in the chat so we can make sure we get to it. And then we'll wrap up at the end, and then any last minute closing remarks. So a few other things to note is you will be muted throughout the conversation today, as well as recorded. So this conversation today will be recorded so you can access it later. And the panel deck, the presentation deck will be sent out afterwards so you can refer to it, because we have some really juicy, I think, topics that are in here, but also some links that will be helpful for those decision makers that are on the call and want to access information. So that's the flow for today. Like I said, I'm excited to be your facilitator, and I'm going to turn it over to Kelly to give us a official welcome.
Thank you, Andrea. Again, my name is Kelly Pollard. I'm the Business and Industry Coordinator at Georgia Piedmont Technical College. On behalf of our president, Dr. Hostin, we would like to welcome you to today's webinar. In an effort to support our manufacturing partners in DeKalb, Rockdale, and Newton counties during this unparalleled time, Georgia Piedmont Technical College Economic Development Division is happy to host this live webinar today. It will be led by industry leaders and representatives who are currently responding to the challenges and providing leadership. This webinar will provide opportunity for you, our manufacturing partners, to engage with the panelists, share best practices, and share information that would help strengthen your organization during this challenging time in our world and in our country, but most of all in our great state of Georgia. So again, welcome to today's webinar.
Awesome. Thank you, Kelly, for kicking us off here. And now, let's see if we can get this to advance here. We'll have introductions from our panelists here, and I'm going to stop shares for just a second so that we can get full screen of our panelists. And please go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then I'll turn the slides back over and we'll start the discussion. All right, are you up first, Allyn? You want to go?
Sure.
Ladies first.
That's fine. Hi, I'm Allyn Robinson. I'm representing Golden State Foods, also known as GSF. We're a food manufacturing plant located in Conyers. We service over 120,000 quick service restaurants, and we're based out of California. So just here to answer any questions you guys have. My role as a training supervisor is to basically create trainings to help our frontline floor associates. So a lot of employees, over 600 employees at our plant, and they're currently working now, so, yeah.
Thank you. Who's up next from our illustrious panel today?
I'll go.
Go ahead, Mike.
Okay. I'm thrilled to be here this morning. I'm Mike Stonecipher, the group manager for the Strategy and Leadership Development group at the Georgia Manufacturing Extension Partnership. For those of you that may not know or do know, it's an extension, or it's a program at Georgia Tech's Enterprise Innovation Institute, We're also a member of the National MEP Network, supported by the National Institute of Standards and Technology. We support annually over 1,000 manufacturers throughout Georgia, conducting training and connecting manufacturers to Georgia Tech resources. Some of the services that particularly within the group that I manage are strategic planning, leadership development, continuity planning, organizational alignment, and tech scouting, as well as I'm the liaison between Georgia Tech and the automotive industry too.
All right, thank you, Mike. And last but not least, Chris.
Hey, how are you this morning? Can you see me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. So my name is Chris Babbitt. I'm the North American Operations Director for Lonza Wood Protection. Lonza is a large Swiss-based company based out of Switzerland, as I've just said. We do have a US presence in both pharmaceuticals and specialty chemicals. And the wood business is a part of the specialty chemicals business. So we have our largest wood facility is in Conley, in DeKalb County, where we have about 150 employees, and also we've got a small facility in Indiana and one in Kalama, Washington State as well. So we're still continuing to operate. We've obviously got some challenges there, and I'm just, I'm here to learn from partners here and hear some good ideas that we've got to share between us, and also share some of the good things that we've been able to do as well. So looking forward to meeting and speaking with everyone.
All right, awesome. So let's give our panelists a virtual hand clap. Yay! Thank you for spending your lunchtime with us and being willing to kind of share your knowledge during this crisis. So, all right, we're going to get ready to kind of kick into our first question. If I can get the slide to advance here. Promise I'll get it right. Okay, so I may have to ask it if oh, there we go, slide is up. Okay, one of the things that we already know is when it comes to employee engagement, if you look at data that has been out there historically, those numbers have ranged as low as 25% engagement to 35% engagement for the manufacturing workforce. So considering our climate today, let's begin by having each of you talk about now in this new client, what's working well in regards to employee engagement. And I'd also like for you to talk about how have you kept consistent messaging to your employees when information is so dynamic in this season. And I'd love to hear from all three panelists, so you guys can go in any order you prefer to address this first question.
I don't mind going first.
Thank you, Chris.
No problem. And you can still see me okay?
You can now.
Okay. I know I was having some camera difficulties. So.
Me too. It's okay.
So two points there: employee engagement, and consistent messaging. So I would say that by a long stretch, it's good to sort of self-reflect and think that none of us have got this perfect, okay, in terms of engagement or consistent messaging through this time. But it's about trying and really driving. So in terms of engagement, reaching out to the partners that you've got in your team and reaching out to everybody consistently, but not overbearingly in terms of the amount of information you spread, especially during this time when there's so much information around. So employee engagement in terms of passing the message across relative to actions during this crisis of coronavirus, so we say, is about forming a regular communication pattern that people can rely on, and then seeking feedback from various different areas of the organization to say, how is this communication coming across? Because one of the things that's obviously a big stretch during this time is the social distancing aspect. So you can't necessarily get face to face with people. So it's about reaching down deep into the organization on an interpersonal basis, getting people's cell phone numbers and phoning them up and following up and saying, how's this message coming across? Is it spreading? Are people taking the right actions? And then using that feedback and tuning and tweaking the information you give out. And I think in some way, giving people that insight into, when they're looking for a central point of messaging, which at the moment, let's say die central, so often from myself and then maybe from an HR department, they're looking for a consumable information source, not just here's a load of data and here's a load of instruction. It's about trying to tweak that to people's different learning styles and information reception styles. So it's difficult by email to speak to all different levels of the organization consistently and all different gamuts of people's learning styles. But that's what I would say is, start doing something. Don't be afraid to do something. Get moving and get sharing information with your organization. And then reach out to people individually from different areas, not just your trusted close few, but everybody, and say, how is this coming across? Yeah, absolutely. Regularly, and keep a note of who you've talked to and tick them off so that you can talk to different people next time when you're not, you've got some kind of visual reference that you're not always going back to the same people and get this different viewpoint.
And Allyn, your perspective on this topic. Thank you, Mike.
Sure. So at GSF, as you know, it's like I said, it's a production environment. So it's very difficult for us to get the message across to our plant associates because they don't have regular access to emails. Of course, those who are in the offices would receive emails from our corporate department and on regular updates, and they would reference, reputable sources like the CDC and WHO. But we then asked those people, the managers, to drive that information down to supervisors, and supervisors drive that information down to leads and their other associates on the floor. And what we were noticing is, people would sometimes ask us questions and come with, panic crisis situations. And finally it dawned on us like, okay, well, maybe we should have leadership go on the floor and talk to these people. I know we're supposed to be practicing social distancing, but at the same time, we can't also gather them in a room and have a big town hall because it's not recommended. So our VP, Jason Siflager, took it upon himself to do floor tours daily and just check in on our staff, just ask them how they're doing while they were working, ask them how their families are doing, because we're a family-based company. And so I think things like that, just showing clarity, letting them know that this information is fluid, it is dynamic. As we get information, we're going to make sure that you guys get it. And we're doing whatever we can to ensure that your environment is safe and that you're going to always, be in a very safe environment. So I think that's the main thing: clarity, consistency, and making sure that the message is consistent across the board.
I like that, especially the point about clarity. And Mike, how has your organization kind of enabled organizations to get that information and to better engage their employees?
Great question, and thank you for that. The university was really proactive in communicating as we would expect. And then our group, we led off with developing a communication plan and aggressively communicating that out to keep everyone aware of how we're addressing the situation, because we're a team that's remote. Mm-hmm. We're throughout 10 different regions in Georgia. So what we do and what we see is we help companies with their plans, with their communication, with their leadership development. So some of what I've seen as best practices and recommendations that I make, the engagement comes through involvement. So we have to find ways to involve the employees, keep them in order to keep them engaged. Communication is definitely paramount. As we learn more about the COVID-19, the impact and how to deal with it, the message may change, but the communication process needs to be consistent and frequent. And there's two ways of doing that. One is the formal method, which is we recommend it creates and maintain a communication process throughout the crisis so that we know when the message is coming. It's a frequent update, it's formalized, And it's and it's done in different ways. The use of maybe an intranet, email, and or face-to-face, by keeping distance, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Second is informal communication. And Allyn kind of touched on that too, talking with the team in the factory. Managers and supervisors should be checking up. It's their responsibility to check up on the individual team members. We've got to keep in mind that everyone has a personal and practical need, and it's our responsibility to address those needs, at least recognize them too, to help reduce anxiety and stress. So we're learning new ways of doing that. I've become a big Blue Jeans fan here recently. The next best thing is being there. And the third part that was mentioned that I'd like to just reinforce is stick to reliable sources for information.
Yeah.
My email is blowing up daily. I mean, just hundreds. But those sources that I know are reliable, that's where I go to first.
Okay, thank you. One last point before we move on to our next question. I'm just curious, well, all three of you, how has fear impacted your ability to keep your employees engaged? And for you, Mike, the perspective of you guys working with organizations, have you seen the scare and just fear actually derail a lot of what you're trying to do in terms of keeping the employees engaged?
There is definitely that. I mean, there's those that are at high risk because of other medical issues. So to protect them, they're either, staying remote. And so what we've seen is there's partial operations, full operations, and no operations.
Mm-hmm.
And we're discovering ways to virtually continue to support those that need support, but also in a way that deals with and works with reducing those fears. You can't eliminate the fear,
Right.
but it's a reality. And so as we keep moving forward, that's a way to focus on how to make tomorrow better than today.
Okay. And Chris and Allyn, any perspective on this idea of fear actually derailing what you're trying to do to kind of keep everyone engaged and keep things moving forward? You guys still there? Chris, Allyn, either of you?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just trying to think of,
Okay.
any one scenario where fear was addressed. And I think the main focus is to reiterate to our employees, what are our creed and values? What is the company culture? What is our strengths? We know that, GSF makes sauces for quick service restaurants like Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, Taco Bell. And so at the end of the day, I challenge them to think, you may not be a doctor, but you're still helping some family out there because, people still need to eat and they're not going to always want to eat what they cook at home. They might want to go through that drive-through and just think about, the sauces that we're making and how impactful it is to them. And so be grateful you have a job to come to, be grateful that you can help others. So just bringing home that information about the strengths we have, going back to our company culture and our creed and values. I think that's helping with debunking the fear again, and also addressing those, accredited sources. People have fears of, is the food going to be impacted? No, it's not a foodborne illness. And so we're going to be okay, just giving them that reassurance.
That's good. Thank you.
And I think, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'm muted myself. I'm sorry, and then I couldn't unmute myself.
Okay.
I think, Mike made a great point about reliable information sources. I think guiding people, fixing your focus on reliable information sources and guiding people to those helps level out the fear. So the thing I've found really interesting is that I've got a few people who have very high fear factor and a few people who are almost dismissive of the risk. and it's about leveling those people out to the middle. So it's almost having to go to the people who are undersold on the risk and selling them and saying, like, this is a real thing. You know, if you don't do these are the impacts to you and your family and the people around you, and teaching them about how you know, it shares from person to person and what an exponential curve looks like and all this kind of stuff. And then with the other people, about teaching them about the control measures. And in the chemical industry, which is really all the experience I have of the last 20 years is the chemical industry, so forgive me if this spreads other industries, but going through the hierarchy of controls of eliminate, reduce, isolated, control, personal protective equipment and procedural discipline, and talking to people about, listen, you know, when we go through social distancing techniques, it's all about eliminating, and that's the very best thing you can do in terms of a control measure. And I'm really teaching people on a basic, like a fundamental level of how these control systems work, and just breaking it down really and giving people support. But I think all of that is based in incredible information, and I think that was a great point. Yeah.
Thank you. I love that, because the fear is real, and if we're going to keep employees engaged, helping them understand how to reduce that fear factor is a real one. So we're going to move to our second question. And sorry to do that this way. Number 2, as it gets ready to come up here, it's about business continuity. There we go. Because of the nature of some businesses, and we've even seen it when we got on the call, Sarah told us about organizations getting ready to shut down now. Many organizations have significantly decreased or shut down operations altogether. How has your organization handled the issues of keeping operations going during this time? And as you think about this particular question, please do share best practices that could help others that are on this journey. All right, so whoever wants to answer this, start off by answering this one.
I'll lead off on this one, because it's really kind of a follow-up and a transition from the fear conversation too. So from a safety and health perspective, those that are still operating, either full or partial operating, there's guidelines been published from the CDC, and they're available in a tip sheet format located at the georgiamep.org/coronavirus. And so there's good information there to help remove that fear. There's also, from an operational perspective, there's some best practices that we've been involved with, and companies are thinking outside the box. So with a partial workforce, one of the considerations is how do I run a factory that's designed to fully utilize 60 people, and I've got 30 here today. And so we're helping consult and advise on how to line balance and rebalance the line. It may overall productivity and output may not be the same, but it continues operation in the most effective and efficient manner. Some companies are retooling. I love to hear of one company we worked with has retooled to make hand sanitizer. And so we've been involved there. So it pivoted from normal operations, and that's another way of getting something that Allyn was talking about, that involvement and removing the fear and being engaged. Also, I'm seeing shared resources, both people, suppliers, and tools. There's conversations that I had this morning with companies that are, where can I find this? I'm short of this. How can we partner together? And so that's from an operational perspective. And for those that are working remotely, such as myself here recently, we're finding new ways of doing things through a virtual community, which I find exciting. During these times of trouble, we're discovering new ways of conducting business, how to get better online training. And I think it'll complement Industry 4.0 is what we'll see happening. And then lastly, something that we shouldn't forget is take the opportunity, if we're working remotely or some of the team members are working remotely, it's a great time for professional development. There's a lot of good deals out there right now that providers are promoting to help with professional development. So look at what you had planned to do this year, just pull it forward through the professional development, and as well as take the opportunity to develop new products and services that can be done remotely.
Awesome. That whole creative and retooling, I think that's such a great point, because it is time for us to think outside the box. All right, Allyn or Chris, on this business continuity topic, your perspectives.
May I?
Mm-hmm.
So I think something. So I've been with this organisation based in Conley now since last August. Something I was impressed with as this came onto the horizon, which came from the management team, was the immediate kind of the positive addressing based on past learnings. So apparently this area was hit quite hard in terms of control when the SARS epidemic came through some years ago, and the team drew on experience from that, or maybe it was just intercompany, but they drew on experience from that and said, you know, we were sat in the beginning of January as a group preparing and saying these are some key roles that people can have if this goes up, you know, if this escalates. Something that I would say, you know, because this is, we're going to get through this, we're going to get over the curve. This is going to be something that happens again, you know, and I think that's something that's really key for me, is that when it comes around again next time, for business continuity reasons, take it seriously. Perhaps we don't need to go into panic buying mode and really, you know, seize the National Health Service, or, you know, the health industry by taking all the PPE out of it, but really learn from past mistakes and prepare for the future. That's something that's really helped our business continuity, is people knowing what their roles would be in advance, knowing the actions we would need to take, and also best practices wise, I think implementing a solid work from home strategy,
Yes,
for as many people as possible. I think this is going to change the way industry in this country works for a long time.
absolutely agree with that one.
And I think it's been so beneficial to realize, I think from a leadership and from an internal company management process, this has been able to help higher levels of leadership and trust in their lower level employees to say that you can be engaged and productive from a working environment. And I think studies have tried to show this in the past, and I think this is the biggest working experiment. I think, you know, you've got to look on the positives that will come out of this. It's scary times, but this is going to change the way, you know, our lives are run for a long time to come in a good way. So I think, you know, implementing a really good work from home schedule, tooling people up to be able to do that, giving them some good connectivity, some good programs like Zoom and Teams and Skype and all this kind of stuff, and setting people's home offices up if they've got that opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. The thought that we'll ever return back to the way it once was is gone. It is about understanding a new norm. All right, Allyn, any perspective on business continuity? Thank you for that, Chris. And Mike, both of you. Are you on mute? Did we lose Allyn? Okay.
I can unmute myself.
Oh, okay. You guys can leave yourself, you're panelists, so it's okay for you to leave yourself unmuted and even talk. We can have a conversation.
That's right. But no, to address the organization and how we've handled some issues, I would say we've been very flexible. That's been our new term for sure, trying to adjust to the times. And, you know, we have a crisis management team that has our CEO on it, and everyone in our higher ups trying to communicate this information. Again, it's on a consistent basis. It's sent through emails, and then it's trickled down to our floor associates. But we've been flexible in that this is something that's never been done before. I know my company does not, because it's a plant manufacturing site. They really do not, they frown upon working from home. And so when this came about, I think they did a great job with, you know, giving us the option, those who work in the office, the option to work from home. And still maintaining communication with our teams, whether it's voice conferencing, video conferencing, but just to kind of get everyone's opinion. This stuff, this crisis, COVID-19 is very fluid. And so again, we're trying to figure out the best way to manage the situation. We have impacted or put things in place. There's some new things coming along, like possible thermometer scanning of our associates. And so that question came up, and how will we handle that? This is something that's never been done before in our plant. And so we're just trying to put the proper precautions in place to ensure that our associates stay safe. But at the same time, we're flexible. We went from a 7-day work week. We've been a workhorse producing more products than our CIM sister plant. So now we're down to a 5-day work week. It's impacted the associates, whether they're happy because they're losing hours, or unhappy because they're losing hours, or happy because they get to spend more time with their family. I'm not sure at this point. But at the same time, their safety is what matters to us the most. We also have impacted jeans. We went from, fully business wear, not even like really casual, to jeans about 3 weeks ago. It's okay. You can come in with jeans. Like, that's the least of our worries. What else? I think before we even got information from our corporate offices, I was real concerned about the hand washing techniques, because at the time we weren't sure how it could be transferred. And so I took the initiative to put up flyers all over the plant and remind people you should wash your hands for at least 20 minutes and give them information about that. So just, giving them information to better help the situation and help them feel more at ease, I think, and being flexible is allowing our business to just thrive. We've done some employee appreciation lunches yesterday and today. We're just trying our best way to show that our employees who have to work at the plant and who cannot practice social distancing as much as they would like to, that we appreciate the work they're doing. So,
absolutely. Great points all three of you guys have made about just kind of keeping business going. Think about thinking about it differently. How do you change up and being flexible in it? Which I think is a great segue to our third question that we have, and one that I think is critical, because when we think about leadership, there is a huge leadership challenge. So question number 3, let's talk about the importance of leadership during uncertain times. How have you had to rise to the leadership challenge? Some of it I think was already mentioned with just really thinking about doing things differently, but in particular, what do you see, what do you believe every leader must do to keep their organization moving forward? And I'm going to be taking notes on this one, because I love this topic of really thinking about leadership and how leaders should rise to the occasion. So who's up first? Advice to these leaders out here.
I'll be glad to lead off.
Thank you. I was like, what? You guys should all be raising your hands.
I also love this. I love this topic, and
Yes.
And do a lot with leadership development. So,
Yeah, me too.
Leadership development was at the CEO's top of the list of needs even before the crisis and during a strong economy. And so, I project that post-COVID-19, we will even recognize more opportunities for leadership development. And I look at it in terms of 3 parts to make a strong leadership team and process in any organization. One is, do they have the technical skills and the training? Is there a strong leadership process to manage and communicate? And then number 3, which is often overlooked, is there a strong set of interpersonal and people skills? And so how those relate to moving forward, and this is what I've seen, and that it's a combination of the biggest opportunity and how it relates to where we're at. To keep moving forward, we need to develop or maintain a strong and frequent communication process. Not random, not concise. Not unconcise.
I was about to say, what?
Needs to be concise. Let me clarify.
Yeah.
And structured. So a strong communication process, and there's different ways of doing that, both remotely and at work. One of the things that we like to teach is managing for daily improvement. The second one is making sure that your managers and supervisors are recognizing and addressing your team's, I'm going back to personal and practical needs. What do we need from a personal perspective to accomplish what we need to accomplish, but also from a practical standpoint to do the job that I need to get done, and understanding what those are. And then thirdly, keep your team engaged, and doing that by involving them in any way possible, even in conversations on how to navigate through the storm, crisis, how to pivot, and how to try new technologies and new ways of thinking, so that we not only make it through the crisis, but we come out stronger on the other side, and we're all doing things in a way that we haven't thought of before. I'm reminded of when the Olympics came to Atlanta and they needed space, and they moved people out of the city, out of the university to make space for the Olympics, and then realized that a large portion didn't need to come in to the city to do their jobs. It could be done remotely and or in the field. So I think we're going to have a lot of learning from this, but following those 3 points from a leadership perspective, I think will make the team not only stronger, but it also help with maintaining and increasing morale.
Awesome. Awesome. Come on, leadership advice. Who's up next?
I would say just providing the big picture would be a great tool to help with leadership. So I have 3 points here in providing the big picture, because you want to always make sure that people are reminded of the context of what we're doing and where we're going, where the company's going. So the first one I want to say is be transparent in communication, near-term challenges, and letting people know where our ultimate goals are, what we're striving towards, and also communicate clearly about the information that you have at hand. The second point is use the crisis as an opportunity to reinforce the corporation's fundamentals for, for example, again, GSF has creed and values. What are our creed and values? What are our strengths as a company? How have we come out of this as a winner in the past, if we have anything to model it against? So we can use those things to kind of gear us forward. And then third would be communicate what you're doing about the problem. Just consistent communication, making sure that communication is clear across the board. And I think another asset is we went through a training through Pathwise leadership training, where one of the tools that they use is called the energy map. And so we constantly talk about this situation, because the energy map is, you're either on the front side of the energy map where you're constantly thinking about solutions, or the back side of the energy map where you're constantly thinking about the problem. And in the middle is those who are kind of teetering and wavering, because you, as a leader, there is some fear there, but at the same time, you want to push people forward to that front side of the energy map. So just encourage your team to come up with solutions instead of only coming to you with problems. How might we move forward in this, or how can we see the benefit in where we are now? And I think the good benefit, like some of you guys have already stated, is, we are working remotely. We are still producing. We are still, striving towards an end goal. So if we can keep that in mind, then I think people will stay focused on that and keep encouraged. So.
Right. I've learned so much from the two of you. All right. You're going to put a cherry on top of this cake, Chris?
Yeah.
I guess it's ice cream, cherry on top of the ice cream.
Cherry on top of the ice cream. I'll do my best. I've been writing notes there. And
Me too.
Mike, I apologize. I had to run out as my little boy fell outside my office door a second ago. So I might connect with you afterwards and re-talk through that. But
okay.
Forgive
everything
me.
Okay though? Everything's okay?
Oh, everything's
okay.
And not another crisis.
Okay, good.
So I think a key for me when leading in a crisis is lead by example. And I think I don't like to think of myself as a micromanager, but I am a production man at heart, I've come up through the organisation of production, and I really, really like to be out on the plants, and I like to, you know, get involved on the day-to-day operational activities. But one thing that's key for me is, especially when I talked before about the elevating the respect or the fear level of those people who weren't taking this seriously, is you know, lead by example. Really drives the work from home structure. You know, demonstrate to people that I am practicing social distancing to the extreme almost. You know, and really be, you know, leading is leading by example. Consistent messaging, again, that came from both Allyn and from Mike also, making sure that we've got that consistent message, you know, regular timing, regular content, and reaching out for feedback. Again, I'd circle back to that, making sure that you can get your message to all the different types of people. Engagement with the employees also. So there's one thing that I truly believe in, is that when people go home, they should be at home. You know, if they work at a site, they should be at home to be at home with their families. You know, we don't live to work, we work to live. So I try to actively practice this with my teams, is that if someone sends me an email, I try not to email them back at night, because that kind of sets a subconscious expectation that if I'm working at 7, 8, 9 p.m. that I expect them to work at 7, 8, 9 p.m. So I try not to do that as best as I can. And I tell people in my teams, please, I am not, outside of working hours, passively available. So what does that mean? It means if you send me a text message or an email response, don't expect me to pick my phone up and respond to you and call you back. If you want me, I'm 100% actively available, and I will pick the phone up to you 24 hours a day. In a crisis, I've changed that. I've changed that around, and I've made sure I've told people I am available by whatever means you want to get hold of me. If you want to text me, if you want to email me, if you want to send a carrier pigeon, if you want to, however you want to get hold of me, I'm available. And I think that's something that has really been a big step up change for me, is making sure I get into new habits of really driving the fact that we're in a crisis. We're all going to have to rely on each other a little bit more, and expect that, you know, work is going to encroach into our home lives, because we're just going to have to manage through this slightly differently. And if somebody sends me a text because they're too busy with their kids, or it's too noisy in their house for them to get on a phone, then fine, I've just got to adapt to that somewhat, and I've got to accept that, you know, people will reach out. So yeah, that would be my 3 points. Consistent messaging, lead by example, and make sure that you're both actively available, so you're reaching out to people, and 100% passively available, responding to those things where people send you the non-direct contacts.
Awesome points. Awesome points. You know, I had to think about what you did put a cherry on top of the ice cream. So thank you. You might ought to rethink those pigeons, though, you know, it get kind of messy in your front yard. But if I can think about what all 3 of you said, really, one of the things that kind of hit home to me is the fact that leaders have to be agile. I mean, that was the biggest thing, is that one way of doing things may have existed prior to the crisis. Coming out of the crisis, it may look a lot different. So thank you for responding to that challenge of leadership. So we're now through our big 3 questions that have kind of grounded our conversation. It's a time for us to get ready to open up to Q&A. So for those that have not had a chance to put your questions in the box, I think we are going to open the line so you can address your questions directly to our panelists here. So questions, are the lines open so that people can ask them themselves? I have a question. Okay, let me look through the chat box and see if I see some that have come in. If everyone is shy. Everyone, you are unmuted unless you muted yourself. So you can ask our panelists directly, or you can type it in the box.
Can anyone hear me? This is Toyasha.
Yes, Toyasha, we can hear you. You have a question for our panelists?
Yes, good afternoon. And I just want to thank you all for everyone who organized and created, and all the panelists for taking the time to do this. This has been some really great information. Again, my name is Toyasha. I'm from Decide to Have Development Authority. And I was just interested in, as it relates to what's going on, if there's any need for financial relief from the operations, the panelists and anyone on the call.
Can you repeat your question in case someone didn't hear?
Sure. I'm interested in knowing if there are any current existing businesses from the panelists and on the call, if there is a need at this time for financial relief.
Okay, financial relief. Anybody have a response, a need for financial relief?
This is Nancy Schultz, and I'm a commissioner in Newton County, and what I see in my district is that there is going to be an extreme need if this continues beyond 2 to 3 weeks. So I think that a lot of our local businesses, our small businesses, are weathering the storm for the short run. But if we have to continue our orders for sheltering in place beyond 2 to 3 weeks, then we're going to see an extreme need. And I don't know that our county can handle that need.
Thank you for addressing that. Any others on the phone with a question? Okay. If there are no questions.
Well, this is Toyasha again. I have another question. And from the panelists, I've heard maintaining the existing workforce, but has there been anyone that has laid anyone off, maybe changing salaries, reducing salaries, or reducing hours, any change, or have actually had to lay anyone off?
I can speak from GSF's point of view. No layoffs, as far as I know. We have reduced our work hours, like I stated before. We were a workhorse, and our associates were working 6 days a week with only 1 day off. The plant was open 24/7. We've now moved from 7 days a week to a 5-day work week. So we've kind of trying to add that work-life balance and kind of being flexible and agile with the times right now.
Thank you.
Toyasha, from my perspective in Conley and DeKalb, we've not laid people off so much as stopped non-business critical work, and I think that is something that is an inadvertent effect on contract companies. So I mean, it's not so much from a financial perspective as from a reduction, let's call it the execution of social distancing activities. And I think that's going to be a real impact, especially to some small contractors. But in the feedback we've had of working with those people, is that at the moment is a welcome relief. You know, a lot of people are in the teams that we work with are, you know, self-concerned for their own health and for the health of their families and loved ones, and want the opportunity to be stuck down. We've reduced, you know, to critical supply staff only on site, and again, we've not reduced the full-time workforce, but we have stood down contractors. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I track the automotive industry, and some of the tier 1s, tier 2s, and large and small have dealt with it different ways to help cash flow. And I've seen everything from executive salary reductions to layoffs to different ways of helping conserve and manage cash. And then I've seen industries that are still, I talked to one this morning that's blessed and still running strong. So it just depends on if you're one of those critical industries and or if, you know, if you're similar to the automotive industry.
Okay. Yes, I think there are going to be lots of changes. We may not know yet the impact, I think, as the commissioner said initially. Okay.
This is Nancy Schultz. I have another.
Yes.
What kind of impacts for your supply chain have you seen?
Everybody hear that? Supply chain impacts on supply chain.
I would say it's impacted GS definitely. Our supply chain has had, you know, it's reduced the need for airports, sporting events. Again, we're in the business of sauces. So from your ketchup to mayonnaise to your mustard, we supply that. And so we've taken a huge hit in those areas. But we also have are currently doing businesses with quick service restaurants like your McDonald's, your Chick-fil-A's, Zaxby's, and Taco Bell, just name a few. And so that has ramped up because that's where people are going. So for us, we're on the blessed side, I would say, saying that we still have, are on the positive side. If this continues to go on for a longer period of time, then things might change. But in the meantime, we're still looking profitable.
I think from the supply chain side, from us, we've two sides of it. So incoming supply chain, we've seen some shutdown from international supply. We are multi-sourced on a few critical raw materials, but we have seen impacts COVID related from both Africa and the Far East that has interrupted the supply chain. We've managed to have enough stock and enough duplicate supply to keep production going. So that's been interesting, and I don't know whether that will settle down, because I think the concern is, especially in the Far East, as people go back to work, will there be a resurgence and a shutdown? So that's something just to, you know, for us to be mindful of, and really to sort of balance the stock in the supply chain coming in. And on an outgoing side, so really quite interesting from a specialty chemical industry perspective, we operate our own delivery fleet. It's not something that I'm used to before coming to this business, so it's really quite nice. And our supply chain on that end has been impacted from, you know, border crossings. More recently, state-to-state border crossings has started to become an issue. And protecting the drivers. We have quite an intimate customer model whereby the drivers go into the sites and actually partake in some of the offloading duties, and we obviously want to protect our staff from exposure, from contaminate, you know, from people who are potentially infected, and also protect the customers from our staff who may be potentially infected during a point of contact there. So it's managing the people out in the supply chain has been quite a challenge. We've some good practices there. That's a good question.
Yes, very much so. And we are about 5 minutes. We're now 4 minutes to 1. So I know this has been a great discussion. And if you have more questions, we will have the contact information available for each of our panelists. So as we get ready to wrap up our call, this deck will be made available to everyone that was on the call. And so you have the email addresses of everyone that participated today, as well as our panelists put together a list of resources that they believe that would be helpful as other leaders are kind of dealing with this crisis. So in just a couple of moments, does any of our panelists want to point out one or two of the website links that you provided and kind of what they might learn from it?
So go ahead, Mike.
I'm just wanting to mention the last bullet. Any Georgia businesses who are able to help the state provide critical supplies to the health industry, there's a link to go to, and the form is on that link so that the right resources can get in contact and help make that possible. So that's one specifically for the cause.
Okay, thank you. And Chris, you were going to point at one of them.
So the there's a couple of really smart ones on here. The top one there from JHU, John Hopkins University, the COVID dashboard. If you want to get a repeatable, consistent, data set that's really worked for you and it gives you a nice visual of where the impact is in the globe. And because they're based in the US, they really break down county by county the COVID impact. They go through active cases, they go through all cases, they go through the amount of deaths, they give you a bell curve on how far it's going up. It's really quite interesting. And the other one that's got quite a lot of my more technical partners geeking out, which I love, is the Unicast social distancing scorecard. And I think Unicast there, the second one down, if you want to give yourself a bit of confidence, so talk about the fear factor. One of the things that myself and my family, we talk about is, are people taking this seriously? It's all very well and good us sitting in the house, but are we going to be here for 22 weeks because nobody else is caring? And how can you measure that? Well, if you go on this Unicast, have taken aggregated cell phone data and really looked about how much cell phones have stopped moving and given a scorecard on A to F on different counties, different states, on how well people are taking up the social distancing. And I think that's really good to give yourself a little bit of self-confidence about how well people in your area are taking the message well, and how people are changing their behaviours and can sort of help you drive and show other people that, it's not just me taking it seriously, there are a lot of other people as well. So I think those are two really, those are part of my daily dashboard.
Thank you for sharing. And actually, I just responded to the chat. This entire deck will be made available, so you'll be able to click through any of the websites and keep informed, as well as I saw there were several links about professional development if you want to take advantage of some of those offerings too. So as we get ready to close, I want to give a special thanks to Georgia Piedmont Technical College, the Economic Development Division, as well as our panelists. So give them a virtual hand clap. Yay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Guys were awesome.
And
Thank you. I'm sorry, say that again.
This is Kelly. And also I want to give a great shout out to Sarah Hall and the Newton County Economic Development Department for allowing us to utilize their Zoom platform today. And I think this is great, and you've made this happen for us, and we're really happy that you allowed us to use it today.
Anytime, we are all in this together. Thanks, panel. Thanks, Dr. Bowens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that concludes our discussion today. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and stay safe, everyone.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for organizing it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.